Hello, I'm Mark Evans with another More Minute, and I have a special guest on this More Minute. Paul Dunn is a local author. He's known, of course, as a columnist, very interested in public affairs, but he has many interests, including a wonderful book he's written with his late wife, BJ, about Donald Ross. But we're here to talk about his latest book, which is really remarkable and a change of pace. It's The Secret War Diaries of Abraham Lincoln. Paul, tell us, how did you shift from golf to Abraham Lincoln?
Well, it's a big shift. Lincoln, of course, was not a golfer, but he was a tremendous athlete. And in the book, I describe some scenes where he wrestled a man. Lincoln was the wrestling champion of his county. And he wrestled a man by the name of Armstrong. Armstrong nearly killed him. It wasn't the way they wrestle today with rules. You just went at each other. But anyway, he beat Armstrong, and years later, Armstrong was accused of, his son was accused of murder. And the wife came to Lincoln and said, "Our son is accused of murder, can you help us?" And Abe never could turn down a lady in distress. And he said, "Yes, I'll defend your son." And he got him off for murder. So Lincoln was a remarkable man. I had been reading Lincoln for years, much longer than I'd ever played golf, and have great admiration for him. And think of Washington, Lincoln, maybe FDR as probably our three greatest presidents. And just had this idea that I'd like to write a book about Lincoln. And yet, there have been 19,000 books written about Lincoln that are known. And I thought, what could I write about that hasn't been said? And I thought, well, he died intestate. He had no will, like a lot of lawyers, and he had no diary. So I thought, well, why don't I write his diary? And that's what I've been doing. It's a long process. This took 4 years. I'm now halfway through the second volume, and it's going to be a 4-volume work, so stay posted.
Now, it's interesting, how did you go about combining history and fact? Because I know you're a professional historian, really, and you want to be very accurate, so this isn't just a case of you're making up things, you're actually putting things in here based on what Lincoln actually said or did.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I have one book, big thick book, and it's a chronology. And this book tells everything that's been known about Lincoln from the day he died, from the day he was born. And so for each year of the Civil War, I can look in that book and I can see who he met today, what generals he talked to, what bills he passed, what members of his cabinet he saw, where he went, and so forth. And that allows me to know on a certain date, like today I'm writing about June 30th, 1862. I know where he was that day, who he saw. So when I write my diary entry, I say, okay, what might Abe have written tonight based on those facts that took place that day? And after I do that, and that's all pure fiction, then after I do that, then I write what I call author's notes. And the author's notes are pure fact, that's pure history. And that allows me to explain to the reader who these people are, what they did. If it's a general, I might say, well, he went to West Point, he fought in this battle, he died here, whatever. So it's a combination of pure fiction and then historic fact. You know.
Just an amazing historical figure with an astonishing contribution to the history of the United States.
Oh yeah, just when you think about it, he's on his way to Washington, all of a sudden war breaks out. I mean, think of that. And we were unprepared. We had very few soldiers, and probably 40% of all the officers joined the South, so he lost half of his army just to start. And he had to protect the capital, he had to protect the country, and yet he had to also govern. And one of the things that made him particularly great was, here's this man who had only 1 year of education, 1 year, and yet he was able to write some of the most glowing prose in American history. And also, which most people don't know, he was also a poet. He wrote some he could recite poetry, poems that he'd learned 20, 30 years ago. He could recite them at the drop of a hat, but he also wrote his own poetry, and it was quite moving. It was very good.
Now, this is a very interesting book, and it's a new insight into a figure. You may think you know Lincoln, but you may have a totally different view when you read The Secret War Diaries of Abraham Lincoln, the first volume, now available by Paul R. Dunn. And I might add, it's dedicated to his late wife, B.J. Dunn. It's available online, all of the usual places, Amazon and others, and at your favorite bookstore. And it's a very interesting subject, and for anyone interested in history, in American history, in the presidency, or in Abraham Lincoln, this will give you some really new insight. So thank you so much, Paul, for letting us talk about your latest book, and we look forward also to your remembering. Don't forget, same channel, same station, and mark my words,